Chief Marketing Officer, Carnival Cruise Line, Kathy Mayer. Chief Marketing Officer, Tourism Australia, Lisa Ronson. And Chief Marketing Officer, La Quinta Inns and Suites, Julie Carey, in discussion with Skift founder and Chief Executive Officer, Rafat Ali.
Hello, everyone. So thank you again. So this Superpanel, I'll give you a backstory. When we first started Skift, in the original decks, what I wrote back in 2011, even a year before Skift started, was a line that said, CMOs are our gods. That's what it said. The strategic bet that we made with Skift, and in travel in general, was that the role of CMOs in organizations, and not just true in travel, this is true in other businesses as well, in an age of digital where the touch points are a million with different brands, the role of CMOs is increasing. It's coming to board level. Some of the CEOs are becoming CEOs as well for the first time in history. And entire consumer organizations, everybody is in a marketing function. That was the bet we made when we started looking at travel. In travel, especially for the consumer brands, that's absolutely true. And it's funny, a lot of the tech service providers back in my previous company that I started, when you asked them who they were selling to, they used to be CTOs, CIOs. Guess who they're selling to now? All of these people. So CMO role has morphed a lot in the last 5 to 7 years. And we wanted to bring 3 different CMOs from different parts of the industry: tourism, cruises, as well as hotels. And that's what we brought here. Thank you all for being here. That was the context I wanted to set up. And everybody wants to pitch you here. That's essentially everybody wants your money. You said you met, I'm not going to name who, but the chief creative officer of the world's largest platform, let's say, yesterday, who also wants your money. So as ever, you're the most pitched people in organizations. What's the decision tree you run through as you're looking at, and most of these, I'm guessing these days, are technology solutions for most part. What's the decision tree you run through as you're looking at these? Very different, I'm guessing, in tourism versus cruises versus hotels. I mean, the turnaround time on trying to put in tech is so long and so different than for each of you.
Well, I think, first of all, there's a lot of emails that come my way that I can't even open. So I apologize. I know you all are working hard. I started out my career in packaged goods sales, and you were desperate to get into that particular decision maker. So I apologize in advance for that, but there is a lot out there. So when we look at that decision tree, it's first, is there something intriguing there that can help me do what I need to do, which is drive revenue, build the brand, and continue to innovate. And what I've seen out there is in that decision tree, it's got to tell me what that looks like quickly. Not like, hey, we're doing business with all these great companies. Well, that's nice, but what is it that you're trying to sell that is really your distinct proposition that you're going to offer me that will help me do one of those things? So that's what I look at. Is there enough there to say, maybe I want to learn a little bit more? The other area is white papers that are out there that I can choose to look at that really do give a little bit more detail if I choose to opt in and read it to help me understand what that could really do for my business.
Lisa?
Well, sadly, we don't have infinite resources. So for us, operating in 15 markets, we have to be really, really mindful that what we do influences, the economic impact back in Australia. So we want to make sure that we're spending every dollar in the most effectively and efficient way possible to get the right message to the right customer at the right time. So for us, it's about doing fewer, bigger, better partnerships, if you like, whether it's with media owners, whether it's with technology companies, because for us, the partnership component is a really, really big part of it. We can't We don't have enough budget, and most brands don't have enough budget to have purely transactional relationships. So for us, it's about having a deeper partnership to be able to work more strategically together to capture additional value outside of just that pure transaction, like, strategy, insights, upcoming technologies and things like that. So for us, it's about fewer but much, much deeper partnerships, and we feel that they add a lot more value to our business and what we're trying to achieve than a whole lot of small partnerships.
Kathy?
I think from our perspective, when I think about it, it's the question of if the value proposition is worth slowing down to speed up. And here's what I mean by that. If you think about two different analogies, and I take the airplane burns 80% of its fuel on takeoff. So with regard to a certain problem that we're trying to solve, if we feel that at this point, given the tools we already have, we're at cruising altitude, is it worth landing the plane, changing plane to take off with the assumption that you're going to go to a higher cruising altitude? Now you could take the other analogy, and some of you will have seen, like, let's just take a wheelbarrow, right? There's been comics that say, well, if you had a square versus a wheel, you would say, well, if I'm pulling the wheelbarrow with the square, it kind of makes sense to stop and change to a wheel, right? But then you actually have to slow down and change that, because at the end of the day, the technology is just not the technology. It really requires people, process, and technology, and then sometimes the silver bullet makes it sound like it's going to be so easy. I've heard so many times it works straight out of the box, but there is that notion of, I need to bring the people along, I need to bring the process around. So is that value proposition worth the slowing down to speed up?
You mentioned budgets. Obviously, everybody's every CMO thinks their budget is a lot lower than what it should be. 2018 planning, I'm guessing, is done for everyone?
Yes.
In the midst of it.
Same, more next year? A lot more, or same level of budgets?
I think it's about budgets for what, really?
Yeah.
And where we're choosing to shift dollars as things.
Tell me where you're
continue
choosing to shift dollars.
Well, we're shifting a lot more dollars into
You're doing a TV
data.
campaign.
We still do TV, yeah.
My wife sees it on CNN all the time, and I think that was the one where, so this is
Got
what
your
this guy
glasses?
does. This guy does this, and then tries to look all like intellectual and does this. So I've just got these glasses, and I've been trying this, watching your ad after that. But anyway.
Thank you for that. Yes, how to win a business. So we continue to look at consumer behavior, right, to see where to put those dollars so that they can work the most effectively, whether it's the top of the funnel or further down the funnel. And we have to try to continue to anticipate those shifts that we're seeing with customer behavior, because it is getting harder to see those media changes fast enough, and especially when you buy in the upfront with your media dollars. But we're also shifting more money to big data and really trying to build systems of insight internally. We had data all over the place, and we're pretty successful with our partners to help us get there, but we really felt that we needed to bring that data in-house, and we're working very hard and spending more people resources and money to build that insight in-house ourselves, so more shift to that as well. And again, to technology, and how do we continue to deliver innovation, and we're shifting more dollars to that as well.
TV is still important, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're doing TV, all of you are doing TVs. While the conversation on the other end, from a consumer point of view, is very different, which is Netflix and Hulu. I mean, if you watch the Emmys that just happened, guess who won most of the awards between Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. So does that worry you?
Look, I think it's less a discussion about purely TV, because I think we all probably develop film assets, if you like, that we then utilise in a lot of different channels. We might be selective with TV, where we know that our target audience, which is a high value traveller, we're not a mass market destination, and we never will be. So it's looking at that target consumer. They will consume that content in so many different channels, which creates a lot of headaches for us on another side, given the explosion of touch points. But in our category, things like cinema are really important, because it's one of the few places where you go to escape and you don't have triple screening and all those sorts of things. So we might have the same piece of content.
By the way, this summer, the movie viewing on theaters is really, really down.
But again, it's picking your titles. So we can't be all things to all people, so we have to be really, really targeted to get to that high-value traveller, because in most of the countries in which we operate, it's only 1 to 5% of the population. So we have to be laser focused on what we do, not only in the traditional channels, but we are moving, most of our spend is in digital. It's now 60 to 70% depending on the market. So TV is slowing down, but it still has a role, and some of the traditional channels still have a role. So I don't think it's dead yet, but we might use a similar piece of film on TV, cinema, Facebook, for example. So it's making sure that you've got those right emotive assets, you know, that are going to engage with the consumer, and then choosing your channel selection. I don't think it's one versus the other, although that's the way the argument has gone. So,
Kathy, I mean, in your case, a mass market brand that you would, sitting from the outside, assume has a lot of TV viewers that still watch linear TV, would potentially be a Carnival customer. Is that changing?
So the way we think about it is we need to meet the customer where they are. So if we are in a world where there are customers who are starting to cut the cord in terms of linear TV, then where is it that they are, and let's be present there. The other thing that we think about is entertainment that earns us the right to market. So in this kind of value exchange, if I want you to listen to me, I need to give you something that's worth listening to. And that could either be something that's entertaining or something that provides a utility, but something that still speaks to you. And so when we think about what the content is, and the notion of branded content, how is it that I can be entertaining or provide something of value that then, because of that, you want to listen to my message, and that message is something that speaks to you. And then in the distribution of that, where are you? Whether you are on TV, whether you are now in the different channels that are creating content on them by themselves, or channels where are leaning into UGC, we need to be where they are. Now, granted that not all budgets are infinite, we have to be choiceful in how we allocate.
yep.
And obviously, your ad is what we saw on, I think CNN is what we're seeing it, right? Why are you doing that?
So to Kathy's point about meeting the customer where they are, our customer still views a lot of television.
And
They're
that's
online a lot
Business Traveler,
too.
right? Is that the Business
The Business Traveler, that's right. And CNN is one of the networks they view a lot, and where a lot of our hotel locations are. Fox News is one that they view a lot. We're also on a lot of news, and ESPN a lot. So we're very focused in our TV spend, but we spend a lot online. And to Lisa's point, video assets are critical for our brands,
yes.
right? And whether that video asset is on Hulu, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on CNN, and adapting that creative messaging and that video asset is critical. Sight, sound, motion is still one of the best ways to make that emotional connection with your guest, and you just have to find them where they are and put that best creative, and video assets still are one of the best ways to motivate our guests and get them to consider La Quinta.
I 100% agree with that, because the most up-to-date stats are around 64% of consumers are using video to help make their destination decision, and then once that's made, about the same number are using video to determine what experiences they'll have in that destination. So I think it's absolutely critical, and to Julie's point, that emotional engagement is still really, really important in our category and every other category, I'd argue.
Let's go a little deeper into it. So every brand, people are saying, is a tech company and a media company these days. Are you a media company? Because you're creating a lot of, I mean, are you going beyond ads into, if I remember right, Carnival, some like TV series, not TV series, but TV series, as well as scripted series, like that's create your own stories that are distributed through media platforms, but through all kinds of other platforms. Are you leaning beyond advertising into your own scripted or unscripted shows?
No, I can speak to that because we are creating the scripted shows. So at CES, we were the first travel company to have ever actually done the keynote. And because we spoke about both the content that we were creating with our scripted TVs, and tomorrow at Times Square, there's going to be this larger announcement regarding that. And then we also announced the Medallion program, which is the technology side of this. So the content meets technology. But at the end of the day, I think if you were asked Arnold Donald, at the end of the day, it isn't still an experience at its core. It's still about all exceeding guest expectations. But the reason why you go into that, I think, is twofold. One is, at the end of the day, when we are trying to sell, and we were talking about our consumer package background, if we were selling, I think mine was Dawn and yours was Gerber, during those times, I can just give you a sample and say, here's what dishwashing liquid is like. Here is what Gerber's like, and then you can try it risk-free. With regards to travel, I need to be able to sell that story, especially in a category where that's your one vacation. You really want to make sure you choose right. And at the other side, because now we are not just doing digital marketing, we're marketing in a digital world. Consumers' expectations change as the technology improves. So because of that, we have to meet them, like I said, where they are, and therefore we need the technology to be there, but in a way that's seamless and you don't notice it, because at the end of the day, you're still after an experience.
Yeah. Is anybody having trouble hearing Kathy? I feel like she's echoing a little bit. Can you check the microphone levels? I feel like she's echoing a tiny bit, and you good? Okay.
Is it me?
All
Okay.
right.
We also do a lot of broadcast work, so we've done a combination of our own, like we did a 3-part series around Restaurant Australia when we brought a whole lot of chefs to Australia and sent them on for meals around the country. And we also work with, in all of our international markets, to bring, as part of our media hosting program, broadcast projects to Australia, because we are a big destination and it's much easier to showcase the depth and the diversity of the country in a half-hour TV series than it is in a 30-second or a 60-second piece of film that might be in social. So we have to do a combination of both so we can really land those messages, to come to Australia.
So speaking of Australia, it's hard to take bad photos in Australia. It just is a fact of life.
It's impossible to take a bad photo
Same
in
like
Australia,
Iceland.
Rafat.
The reason why Iceland, everybody thinks it's like the first time they've ever, like they're the pioneers in Iceland. Like a million people have already gone. You're not pioneers. Anyway, we did an analysis early on at Skift. Instagram was still early. Influencers as a term probably had not taken hold 3-4 years ago. You may remember. Like there was some number we did out of top 400 travel photos on Instagram. It was some crazy number. 390 were like Australia photos. It's just like some mind-blowing number.
It was a little bit higher, but yeah, that's okay.
Something. It was something in that. It may have been the percentage versus numbers. Instagram obviously has been a huge boon to travel in general. Influencers have become the lingo. You use them. Do you use them? Do you care? Do they? I know you do. Mm-hmm. Do you care?
We did some testing with influencers and really didn't see as much of what we'd like to see from it. But where we have had more success that I'd like to think is our brand ambassadors acting as influencers is when we've offered them to come in and get points for sharing their experiences with La Quinta, sharing their joy of using some of our benefits from our loyalty program, and we incent for different things, and that has been really successful. We've gotten more impressions from that and more shares from that, from our loyalty efforts, than we got from the influencer program. So we've taken a slightly different approach. I think that might be related to, because we're in mid-scale, we don't have a lot of amenities, or we aren't in great destinations like Australia, so we really want to incent them for enjoying their stay and enjoying the area around as part of the stay at La Quinta, as well as their benefits from the loyalty program. So that's our approach right now. I think we'll continue to experiment with influencers, but right now we're seeing more success in a more directed way.
You have no idea how many influencers want free room nights. Yeah. I'm sure you do have
They
an
do.
idea, actually.
Yeah,
Influencers, obviously.
it's a big part of our marketing program because
Has it helped? Have you figured out the ROI?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing for us to say Australia's great, come down, but if you've also got someone like Chris Hemsworth.
I really wish you said it don't work, it's worthless completely, because I just hate it. Okay, go ahead.
If you've got someone like Chris Hemsworth talking about your brand, I don't know why, but it tends to mean more than when I'm talking about Australia. But, back to the point on budgets, we don't have unlimited budgets. And when you get someone like Chris, or, we've got advocates all over the world from, many different destinations. And if they're talking about it, it generates a whole lot of PR value and some interesting stories and about the storytelling.
And you had Oprah, and then that was a while ago.
Yep, yeah, she came down, and for Oprah to say, this is a beautiful country, it means so much to so many people because she's so credible. I think the thing that any brand needs to take caution with when you're looking at influencers or ambassadors or any advocacy program is, do they align to the brand? is there a shared value exchange between the ambassador and your brand? Otherwise, it just looks really disingenuous and not authentic. So, we're really comfortable that we've got a really good stable of authentic ambassadors, and we're adding to it all the time. We've got a youth campaign coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we've taken on some youth ambassadors because, again, they can tell the story of Australia in a lot more credible voice for the youth audience than, sadly, me, because I'm not quite in that demographic anymore. But, it's really, really
I had to
important for us.
Google, as soon as you launched the campaign, like 5 of our people in our company said, oh my God, Chris Hemsworth. I said, who is that? And I had to...
Rafi, come on.
I know.
For us, if you think about, only less than a quarter of the US has actually ever sailed on a cruise. So when you think about that in a world of not infinite resources, we need every single person educating, inspiring around cruise. If you take the other side of it, is if you ask Facebook, the top 3 things shared on Facebook is, you would guess, kids, weddings, and travel. So if we need it, and people are naturally doing it, not just, the question is what's the definition then of influencer? So yes, it's people that are celebrities. So we had Oprah sail on our Holland America ship, and you could sail with her. We have people would have the reach in the different pieces, but it's also our guests and our crew, and they're already naturally doing that. So organically, we're already seeing that, and we see that part really works very well.
Yeah. Is your job repeat or is your job new? Because you just said like new, trying to market cruises to it's the biggest existential question for cruises, really, is that the people who go again and again, but there's a whole different mindset of people who will never go. I've raised my hand. And so is biggest challenge for you, repeat customer, is the biggest thing you're thinking about is repeat customers or new awareness?
So in our case, there's 2 ways I've looked at it. So if you go to How Brands Grow book in terms of how do you grow a brand, it is always about reach, right? So in our case, if we want to grow unconstrained demand to be able to drive up yield, we want to make sure we always are filling top of the funnel. And given the fact that there's only a quarter that have ever sailed, there's a lot of opportunity. At the same time, when we think about it, we have constrained inventory. So if you take all of the cruise inventory against all of the hotel inventory, we're only actually 2% of the entire lodging capability, and that's not even including all of Airbnb, which would then, I don't know what that percentage would be. And so in that case, the way I've thought about it is that it's actually like a presidential election. As you know from the last presidential election, you only need 270 electoral votes to win. So at the end of the day, when we're thinking about, well, what are we going to focus on given the limited resources and the fact that you only need 270 electoral votes to win in a constrained inventory environment, we're very much targeting the people who are open to cruising and just make sure that they understand all that's possible with cruising and about Carnival, and then let them make their choice.
For us, it's both, and it varies quite dramatically by market. So in a market like Singapore, we get about 66% repeat visitation. There's a lot of visiting family and friends and that sort of thing, whereas a market like the US, it's probably about 30%. So again, the content that we serve up to that customer at the right time is slightly different. So a Singaporean potential traveller would be all the new experiences that Australia has to offer that you didn't see on your holiday last year or 2 years ago. And in the US, it's again about experiences, but probably in a slightly different way. And we also know that, say, with the US market, we're high on aspiration, but at the moment we're quite low on visitation. But after they've been, we become number 1 from an advocacy
Only the
point
climate
of view.
change could bring Australia closer to US.
I'm looking at it.
Seriously.
There's not a technology solution. I've asked Google, Adobe, they can't do it, but I'll keep trying.
I know you guys have invited me to speak at it like every year, and I say it's just a little further than I would like to.
You're killing me.
But it's worth the trip.
Exactly.
I know, it is worth the trip, I will say that. Repeat versus new awareness.
For us, it's both. When you look at the numbers of people, we still have a high percentage of new people to the brand every year. When you look at the nights, right, and the revenue, you see that we have a significant percentage that's driven by our loyalty program and repeat customers. So it is a everyday job trying to do both of them with very different tools and techniques. And really the experiential piece, once you've stayed with La Quinta and once you've signed up for the loyalty program, and the influences that we want to do using the loyalty program gives us more tools to get you back in. So both are a big focus of our team, and different tools and techniques to get new customers in, as well as get them to come back and stay and join our loyalty program.
So let's shift gears a tiny bit. Facebook versus Google, obviously they're both here, actually quite strong presence, both of them. Historically, OTAs have been very strong in the search game. Facebook seems like an opportunity for brands to directly then sort of leapfrog Google and the stranglehold that OTAs have. Facebook and the different platforms, I'm not just saying Facebook. To be able to leapfrog and tell the direct story. How heavily have you invested in the social platforms? Tourism, it's a more clear-cut case. Cruises and hotels, probably less. So I just want to hear from you. Platforms, and then the intent to convert. And have you been able to track it?
So we put significant more investment in pure social plays because the trackability has gotten better from an engagement standpoint. And we're seeing good traction there. We've done retargeting in Facebook for many, many years, but the more social, pure video play, we're seeing great engagement there. We don't see it as trackable to the visits that we'd like to see to the website because it's really a different phase in the funnel. So
is that Facebook's issue, you think?
I think there's opportunity for them to better help us there and provide better metrics. I don't think right now, we see that the closer in intent that is signaled for travel shows up in search. And right now, we spend a lot of money in search because we can track it, it's there, we can show it to our owners. Hey, this person searched, we got the search and they showed up at your hotel, right? That trackability is super important to what we do, but they work together. So we have been very actively engaged in a marketing mix model process. We have a data set from 10 years, and that really helps us understand how they work together, because it's really important to understand that they work together. You need your broad reach upper funnel vehicles to influence search. We know we have better search conversion when we have broader reach vehicles on at the same time. So I think as marketers, we have to be very careful to not fall in the trap that they are completely discrete things, but they do work together, and understanding how they work together is critical to drive your overall ROIs.
For you, obviously, social has been a huge boom.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain that to anyone.
I mean, it goes without saying, as you said previously.
Is search important for you? Obviously, yeah, because people are searching
definitely.
for Australia.
Yeah.
But is it, as a percentage, which is higher, spend-wise? Is it Google or is it the social platforms?
Probably can't disclose that, Rafat, but look, we're investing more and more.
Tourism Australia annual report, probably in there.
We're investing more and more because, as you well know, we've been very successful organically with Facebook. We've got 7.5 million followers, 2.7 on Instagram, and that's great, but what we're moving more to, paid and amplifying some of that. We've got great content. We get 3,000 pieces of content every single day at Tourism Australia.
And you were one of the pioneers in, really not just in travel, but pretty much everywhere, is to use consumers taking the travelers' photos and then amplifying through the giant presence that you had.
Absolutely, because you can't take a bad photo in Australia, so we take advantage of that. And again, it's going back to the using multiple different people to help tell our story, because we can be a little bit abstract if you've never been to Australia, and so seeing a photo someone took today of that koala or some of the unique attributes that we've got really helps us to sell the story of Australia. So for us, both social and search are really, really important in the customer journey, because the point is so valid that you can't just focus up here and not join all the dots down here, because the customer experience, and in planning a holiday, we have to really understand where they are in that journey to understand what content to serve them up so that we can ultimately get them on a plane and get them to Australia. So
the way we thought about this, so I was playing with my daughter. She asked me to come play with her the game Mastermind. Does anybody remember playing Mastermind? Or maybe I'm dating myself. So you have 8 colors, you choose 5 if you're the other player, where you put in a certain, you're trying to guess the right color in the right position. And then the other player has to give you signals. So you give white if you pick the right color in the right position, red if you put the right color in the wrong position, and nothing if you did not pick the right color and is in the wrong position. So I'm trying to explain this to a 5-year-old. And so explain, demonstrate, act, check, okay, but it's not going to be perfect. And as I'm playing this and she gives me the wrong signals, I'm realizing that's actually digital marketing. Because what is happening?
You have the best analogies.
Yes. I've thought about this one a lot because I was like trying to explain mastermind to my daughter. And so we don't have an express set of rules with a customer that says, if X, do white, and if Y, if B, do red, right? That's not, they didn't sign a contract, they didn't sign up to the game. And so when I thought about this, we have to give them the reason and the value to give us the data that then allows us to then guess what is it that they want, what are those 5 colors in the right position, so I can serve up the right content at the right time, which is every marketer's dream.
Holy grail, right.
And so as we've tried to think about, well, how am I going to collect those signals and how do I act on those signals, what is amazing about the platforms as we now have evolved, and if you asked me a year ago, it has now changed between Facebook, Google, and Amazon, is that
so what has changed in the year?
Is the notion that identity, intent, and commerce and community are now converging. So before, if you asked me the question, I would always say, well, Google has intent, and then Facebook has identity, and Amazon has commerce. And a lot of the things that they've announced is each of those 3 players going to make sure that they have that nirvana, or at least attempting to be able to connect the dots and have the content and have the community, which allows the eyeballs for the commerce to come together. So then as marketers, as you're trying to then piece this together, which is the reading of the signals, therefore, where should I play and what should I serve up? And the hard part is that the signals are not always clear. So for example, and I was just talking to our digital agency that said, in the past they used to say, well, dwell time meant engagement. So if you were actually on the website for a very long time, that must mean you're engaged. That must mean I'm doing a good job. I was talking to another digital agency say, you know what? That's actually not true, because if they're dwelling time, that means potentially that your website is not doing a good job because it's taking so long to get done what they actually want to do. So which is it? The same signal could actually mean 2 different things, which is what was happening to my daughter because she was not using white and red correctly. But that's actually what happens with consumers. So what is powerful now, though, is that slowly, ever so slowly, it's not perfect, we all know that. We're going to get better at reading those signals. We're going to get better at being able to serve up. But those platforms will allow us to have a way to engage with the customers so that we can give them something of value so that they can give us the signals that we need to be able to give it to them what it is that they want.
You mentioned when we were doing, I think on the phone call we were doing, moving people down the funnel, chatbots and others. I think you're experimenting with it, right?
Not yet, no. We have, back to the human question, yeah, we are looking at how we do better in that space because we see that our OTA partners, as well as Google, are talking to the customer.
OTA partners, that was very well put.
Thank you, and they're talking to the customer when they're in our hotels. And that really isn't what we want, right? When that guest becomes our guest, they've purchased our product, they've walked in our doors, we really need to own that communication experience. So we are looking at very different ways that we do that. We've tested a few things, but not chatbots. We've tested AI and still working to optimize that. But we very much believe we need to own that part of the process and are really in the early stages of figuring out what might work best that consumers want to engage in. They don't always want to engage in the way you think they do. They sometimes want a human, right? We forget we are in the human business, and that's more important. But we know that there are people who want to text us, right? So we have to find the customer where they want to engage and be there in a way they want to talk to us. And we're working on that right now, but we're not super far along.
Does customer service report into any of you?
What's the question?
Customer service report into any of you? It's fascinating that this CMO's role is obviously now also including user experience, right? Is that a big changing part of your and the user experience, both from a design perspective as an actual experiential experience as well. Talk about how that's changed.
So in our sense, if you think about it, we just did a creative agency review, and the agency that we picked said that everything is media. In a way, we think about the dichotomy of branding versus customer experience, marketing versus customer experience. All marketing is customer experience, and all customer experience is marketing. So it's not a false choice where it's a zero-sum game. It is meant to be self-reinforcing. So when we're trying to do marketing, since like a consumer packaged goods, it has to be about customer experience. And when we're doing customer experience, we actually have to deliver on that brand promise, but also infuse into that customer experience ways by which people can then share out to be able to spread that news more. So that has to be, in my mind, very self-reinforcing. So no, in our case, it doesn't report into us, but my relationship with the person that does own it is so close because we do appreciate that everything that's marketing is customer experience, and everything that's customer experience is marketing.
I mean, I 100% agree. I think if you're always focused on the customer, and you know, I have a different background as well, then you have to focus on the end-to-end customer experience, even if you don't own it, like in our case. So our role is, because we don't transact, obviously,
Right.
is to send leads off to industry, and we want to make sure that we're making that user journey as optimal as possible, so that we can send a lot more leads off to industry, and then they can convert them, to get them to come to Australia, whether that be with airline partners or hotels or the multitude of other experiences in Australia. But I 100% agree. If you're focused on the customer, you have to focus on all of those aspects. It's not a choice.
So, changing topics a little bit as well, this magazine that we launched yesterday, which hopefully each of you have gotten. If you haven't, I think registration has it there. Travel in an age of permanxiety, where consumers are permanently anxious as a result of all the crap that's happening in the world. From a marketing function, and this is very interesting, I think Jason asked the Marriott CEO as well, how much do you lean into the social, cultural touch points of the day, of the year, or do you stay away from it?
Well, if I can answer that, we're a government agency, so we are, to a certain degree restricted. However, if I was speaking just as Lisa Ronson, in Australia at the moment we have a big issue around marriage equality, and I applaud brands that have come out in support, like Qantas, like Ben & Jerry's, Airbnb. A lot of the banks have come out, because I think to one of the earlier points being made around Accenture, if that's representative of your customers and your staff are feeling really good about that issue, I think it only ends in greater customer experience and better brand health metrics, because I think that brands that have a clear purpose and do take a stand on these things are very well received by consumers. And I think brands that have had a purpose and have leaned into some social issues have done better than those brands that have not really done anything about it. So my strong view is if you've got a purpose, share that purpose, because your customers and your staff will respond really, really well to it. So that's my personal view on the issue. So
the way we've thought about it is three different buckets. If I'm going to do marketing in a certain time of year, let me do it when it is culturally relevant so that it can actually work harder. So as an example, we see ourselves as America's Cruise Line. If we're going to think about a time and place to market, well, what better way than the July 4th Independence Day? So we did what we call the world's first social barbecue, where you sent a tweet, we actually laser inscribed it into the bun of the hamburger, and then off you went. So that message came from our fans that then was served to the military. That military person took a photo, sent it back to the fan. In the second bucket of, well, do you take a stand or not? And I think I agree with you. As a brand, you have to think about, well, what are your brand values? And as marketers, what we are called to do is act in accordance with those brand values, the brand values that are shared with the customers that you have and the customers you want to get. And in our case, since we're America's Cruise Line and one of our 4 brand values is inclusiveness, that then dictates that we don't take a stand, because we've gone through that filter. If you go to the third piece around, well, what is our corporate mission and what do we then have as our corporate CSR program? So when you have something like the hurricanes that just happened, we are compelled, that is the right thing to do, to really help the people who are impacted by Harvey, Irma, and so forth, because that's who you are as a company, and you've predefined that. So having those things predefined really helps you guides what you do in those moments.
For a mid-market brand like yours, is there risk?
I think there's always risk unless it's aligning with who you are as a company and what your role is as a brand. So we've laid out our core values too, and we really look to those to guide us. And one of the areas we as a company that we have then parlayed into we as a brand is really around the military. So we are a huge supporter of the military. We launched an enterprise-wide initiative to support the military, not just the brand or the loyalty program. We did these things, but we pushed it into hiring to try to get more franchisees that come from military backgrounds. You name it, we've looked at it. So we've used our values to guide us. We've focused on military from a company standpoint, parlayed it into the brand, and then we really looked to the role of, should the brand be there? Is that the right place for the brand to be? And weigh the risk too. So, our brand is about waking up on the bright side. We're about being the catalyst for optimism. So that's really where we play, which a lot of times doesn't have an opportunity to weigh in on social issues when you're trying to uplift people, right? And that for us is really how we make those decisions. But we've really focused more our efforts as a company, as a brand, where we've taken a stand more around military efforts. As an example, the hurricanes were huge. Houston is our largest hotel market. And we decided we've got to do something, so we made the opportunity to donate points through our loyalty program through Team Rubicon, which is a team of people who are trained in disaster recovery that go in, and so they are staying at our hotels, and we're really supporting them. So we make those choices, very measured, right? Very measured for our brand.
You mentioned talent. I think you and I talked about it on the phone as well. Huge issue. In marketing, do you, as you're thinking through, how are you thinking through? Because the talent, getting the right people who understand digital and marketing and brand and conversion, people that we look for as well in much smaller way. But are the right people entering the industry? Do you think you're able to, what's the talent issue?
I think talent right now is hard in some certain specialties. I think data and digital are two areas that we find are very challenging to find talent. They like to live in the coast. They particularly like to be in tech. The turnover
you can start an incubator because that's like the cool thing to do. And
well, I think we have to think creatively, right? How to recruit differently. How do we get talent in younger to our organization? It definitely is more of a challenge in those areas. And then we need deep specialists, but we also need generalists who know how to connect all these dots. The consumer, when they engage with La Quinta from shopping to post-stay, they don't think of us in silos and buckets, right? It's one experience. So we really want the folks to know their specialties, but how it all connects to the bigger picture. And it's a delicate balance between specialists and generalists, especially when you have a small team. And we have a very small team at La Quinta that are really mighty folks that do a lot of things well, but it is a balance, a really delicate balance between specialists and generalists and connecting all those parts of the experience together.
I'm guessing you have a similar answer.
I think from ours, as the 1 year has passed with my team, there were a lot of people that have really grown up in Carnival and really know the brand and its history. And there's also a group of folks that we've brought in from the outside. So at the end of the day, for me, it was really about diversity. Yeah. How do we balance this, knowing who the brand is, and making sure we stay true to that and not changing that at all? How do we infuse new skills, as you said, around data and digital? And how do we sell our value proposition, not only as a team and as a company, as why will you move to Miami? I mean, I went from Las Vegas to Macau and Miami for something like that. Obviously, I'm not picking geography necessarily all the time in kind of those choices. But at the end of the day, what we like to believe is it's very hard to not have fun when you're actually selling fun. And you'd be surprised how many people actually buy into that.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, sorry.
No, we're in a similar situation, and I think it's all the same points, and it's one thing to attract people, and it's very much about diversity of people. Then it's leadership and values, and making sure there's a strong alignment there to be able to keep those talented people in the business and draw on more talent. So I think it's one of the biggest issues that we all face.
All right, thank you. That was fascinating. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.